All right, well, then I'll turn it over to Bryce to start the program.
Just a quick introduction from me, as he is pretty well known to the rest of our group. We have David Parker from the Forest Grove School District with us today to give us an update on the challenges and opportunities that they're looking at this upcoming school year. So thanks for coming, David.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm sorry I've been missing. It's been a real challenge. Can someone make me a co-host so I can share my screen while I'm waiting to get that squared away? I will say I've got a couple of brags, so I can throw my, I don't know if we take Venmo yet, but I can pop in some money. The first brag would be our maintenance department. We had a bunch of desks and chairs and things that had come out of our schools. They were, some of them were in disrepair, that kind of thing. And we began to get phone calls from parents about getting desks and chairs to create spaces in their houses for their children to do their homework. And so the maintenance department saw the need, and we advertised it. And we had probably close to 300 old desks that were no longer useful in our organization. We had them on pallets, and we were going to start giving them away at 10 o'clock. And by 10 o'clock, half had already been given out to folks, and they brought out another set. All in all, we've done close to 300 desks and chairs for parents to kind of create spaces in their houses for work. I just saw a picture. They put out more stuff. So it's been a real kind of successful, the community had a need and we had some resources. And so connecting those two was really great. Let me see if I can share yet. There we go. So I think you guys are seeing my presentation now. Is that right?
Looks good.
Perfect. So then my second brag would be this one, which is on June 2nd, my son had his first child and my first grandchild, Augie. And so we're just having a great time kind of being grandparents. So better charge me for that brag too, because he's been a wonderful joy in our life. So it's been fun. It's been strange, like with everybody trying to control contacts and everything. So it's been a challenge, but we're just enjoying being grandparents. So that was my first brag. So it's been on March 12th is when the decision was made to cancel school and for us to go into a distance learning format. And over March and April and May, there were lots of things that went well for the school district. And then there's some things that we really were challenged at. In particular, when we surveyed our parents and our community members about the comprehensive distance learning, there were some things that they felt like we are doing really well, which is, again, our empathy and reaching out to parents and making sure that we were trying to address their needs. Our parents said really great things about us. Where there's still challenge, part of the agreements that we made going into that distance learning was, one, we weren't going to assess, and we weren't going to be, attendance was very loose. It was hard to figure out who was actually in session with the teacher. So there's some pieces that parents really struggle with. Again, many of our parents were home from their jobs, so they were trying to also take care of their kids and help with their learning and do their full-time jobs. So there's lots of challenges here. At the beginning of June, ODE brought to us the first kind of set of guidelines that they wanted us to open school. And in June, the current level of virus in our county was about 5 cases. In the state, it was about 5 new cases a day, right around March 12th. June 1st, we were right around 30 to 50 new cases per day. I think in our county here, it was averaging right around 18 to 20 of those cases. July 1st, we were at 361 cases per day. And August 1st, we were at 333 cases. So our summer has changed a lot because we went into the summer, the ODE had given us guidelines around how we were to open our schools under their guidelines and get kids back in school. But as you can see, we went from 30 cases per day to up over 300 cases per day. And our county hasn't really, I mean, it's one of the higher case counties. So as the summer went on, we had this real challenge. We started in June trying to create what they're calling a hybrid, which would be half of the kids come on some number of days and then another half come on the other set of days. But as the summer went on, things really swung for us. We have basically three choices. Fully open our schools so that kids are coming back to school. We have class sizes, we have staff for them. Hybrid, where we're only bringing in a portion of them at a time. And then this comprehensive distance learning. To do that, all of our schools have put together teams that started working in June, and they worked all summer to kind of design how each of these schools would work in the hybrid format. Our charter school and Create, another kind of alternative school in our district, have also put together plans. We also have a team at the district level who's been sitting down to kind of manage this process. Of the things that we're thinking about, there's kind of the first three things are public health, which is with the virus being communicated in the community, we had to figure out how that wasn't going to happen inside of our schools. And these, there's a whole series of things here that that we would spend our time thinking about. Physical distancing, part of the guidelines say that all of the kids need to be at least have 35 square feet of space inside of the classrooms. For us, that means that it's about 15 kids who could fit into our normal classrooms. We're having to pull out a lot of teacher furniture. There's bookcases and there's places to store manipulatives, and we're having to kind of clean up our classrooms. Earlier you heard the conversation around that we're taking tables out and we're replacing them with desks. That's part of this, trying to get our classrooms ready to still host kids but have enough space for them. Hand hygiene, so we've got basically hand sanitizing stations coming into the schools, in the classrooms, and then in the hallways. Cohorts is a concept that is very important into how we're designing the school. To not spread the virus within the school, we have to keep the number of contacts that a kid has low. And so what that means is, in the elementary school, it's probably the easiest to see it. Typically, we have about 24 kids in the class. That's our average. We'll take 12 of them and then make them a cohort. And those 12 kids will come to school with each other each day. Currently, the hybrid is set up that there's one group that comes Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, the kids don't come to school and we clean it, because in between the two cohorts, we have to sanitize the whole room and the space. And then the second cohort comes on Thursday and Friday. What we're looking for is that the kids come to school on a bus. And so there's a certain number of contacts they'll have on that bus. They'll be in the classroom where there's 12 other kids, and those are 12 contacts. For us, what ODE wants is that they want us to stay underneath 100 contacts for a student in a week. And so for elementary, it's pretty easy. I think we can keep it down closer to probably 25 to 30 contacts for a student inside of their week. Where it gets more confusing is at the secondary level. Our high school runs class periods. They have 8 periods. They run 4 on Monday and then the next 4 on Tuesday. And then you come back for 4 on Wednesday and then the next 4. But 8 periods for a high school student, 30 kids per class is 240 contacts. So we're not going to be able to run our high school like that. So they're changing the way that they teach. And basically the way the high school will run is they'll run 4 periods and they'll run them each day. They'll get through the material quicker, they'll get credit quicker, and then we'll switch to the next 4, probably second semester. So this idea of cohorts is the other thing I want to point out is cohorts also works for our teachers. Because if our teachers are teaching in a classroom and there's 24 kids that they're exposed to during the whole week, if they walk next door and talk to another teacher who has 24 other student contacts. Now that teacher has multiplied the number of folks that they're in contact with twice. If they go to a staff room and have lunch with 4 other teachers, we could have a whole school be quarantined just by simply having a teacher who's sharing lunches together. So the complexity of what they're asking us to do here is large. It's quite a challenge right now for us to figure out where this is going. We're ordering that protective. Everybody above 5 years old in our schools will be wearing masks. We have staff who are already returning to the building, so they're already wearing masks. I have my mask over here. When I'm meeting with anyone in the same space, we are all masking up. We also have face shields coming for some of our staff who work with students who are more intensive. We have protective equipment. We have barriers going in at all of the front offices, all those kinds of things. The environmental cleaning and disinfection. So we're going to need more folks to not only come in at night and clean, we're actually going to need more folks during the day. As we come back into school, we're going to, I'm going to be hiring because we're going to have folks who have to clean playground equipment in between cohorts using it. We're going to have folks in the hallways to maintain social distancing. So there's some real challenges in trying to make this. We're estimating right now, if we would have started in school September 8th, it's going to be close to probably $2 million is kind of where we're estimating our extra costs are to try and run schools. And then we have to have a process for when someone gets sick to be able to, if they get sick while they're at school, we need to be able to isolate them and get them back to their parents and not infect any of our other folks. And we also have to then work through contact tracing because everybody who's been in contact, and contact has been inside the 35 square feet for more than 15 minutes. All of those folks we have to contact and then quarantine from the organization. So we're working out procedures that teachers, like here's a teacher procedure right now, is when we get here at work, they get an email, they have to respond to it that basically says, I'm feeling fine and I don't have any symptoms. And then at the end of the day, I get another email that I respond to and I put through, here are the people that I was in contact today, because we have to track every day who's been in contact with who. And students we have can do the contact tracing through their scheduling, but it's just an immense organization that's we're kind of going through here. The other aspects here, the first 3 aspects were the public health part of this, which is what I was kind of talking, but there's also, we have to start talking about what is instruction going to look like? What's our family and community engagement going to look like? How are we reaching out? How are we going to connect with parents so that we can do the teaching and learning here? That's what our staff is currently kind of working, spending most of their time on. So we were working on these blueprints under the impression that we were going to be going into the hybrid. ODE has basically about every 3 weeks made changes to their guidance. And near the end of July, there was the next big change. Superintendents had been meeting, and again, watching the number of cases ramp up in our county, we had very big worries about, even with our organization and the way that we're setting up our schools, and social distancing and sanitation, even with that, at the rate that we were increasing cases, we weren't going to be able to keep it controlled inside of our school. And so the governor came in and provided some metrics for us because we needed to be able to base this on some research. And what they did is they went and looked at other countries who opened their schools successfully. And what they found is that the countries that opened their schools successfully all had a couple of things. One is that the case rate per 100,000 folks was less than 10 in the preceding 7 days. The other one was test positivity was less than 5%. And so that's where the governor's recommendations for when we should be opening our schools. Currently, this is kind of our current metrics. I pulled this off today. In our county, we're at 42 right now, 42 cases per 100,000. Test positivity rate of 4.1%. We have to, for me to open K-12 schools, I have to get down below 10, which is where we were at earlier in June. But we still have a ways to go. The test positivity rate is good, and we're seeing a good trend here, because in the beginning of July, we were up around 58, 63 in different places. So this is the right trend, but that's how these metrics are working. But as someone mentioned earlier, there was a little, there was some ODE threw in a couple of curveballs. And one of those curveballs was exceptions to the metrics, which is what they began to say is one of the challenges that we had in the spring was the distance learning worked fine for some students, but for other students, it did not work fine. And in particular, our students who have IEPs, our students who are second language learners, and then we just have a set of students that this isn't the way they like to learn. So these exception metrics allow us to begin to bring kids back into the school site in what they're calling a limited in-person experience, which means that I can't bring more than 10 in a space at a time, so that it's a very small class size. And I have to be below 30 and the test positivity below 5%. And then I got to follow all my rules around the public health part, sanitation and hygiene. This brings up there's some real challenges here because of some of these kids are some of my most vulnerable, which is some of my medically fragile and and still at 30, I'm not sure where we're going to be on that. So we've got to kind of find out. I know once I get below 10, I'm opening schools for everyone. And when I get below 30, I need to start thinking about limited in-person instruction. For us, we still have to kind of figure out what that's going to look like and when is the right number. When do we feel like we can get our schools open and kids can begin to interact, and I'm not going to be closing that school a week later because of an outbreak. Questions on kind of that part. I was going to run you through kind of what some of the school days look like at elementary, middle, and high school, but I'd take a couple questions now if you have them before I get around the governor's decision and kind of the metrics and what we're looking at.
I have a question regarding busing. Are they going to discontinue busing?
No, what we're looking at right now is the busing regs are that we have to have kids separated by at least three feet. And what we're kind of looking at doing is moving kids, like kids from the same family who are in the same bubble, we'll put them in the same seat. And then we'll kind of stagger kids from there. What we're looking at, we changed some of the start times for our schools because of now we have one bus going, like Rose Grove would be a great example, which is we have a large, like 75 plus kids are all in one little development. But I'm going to now have to like send a bus there, pick up kids, come back, drop them off, send the bus back, pick them up again, because I can now only do about 35 to 40 kids in a bus. And so we're going to there's a lot of logistical pieces, but we will still be providing busing. Lunches is another one. Since March 12th, our school district with the federal government making their, in the CARES Act, part of it said that I can feed any kid under 18. And so what we did is we set up we had buses rolling around providing lunches. We still served out of two places. I want to say it was Cornelius and Joe Gale, but it might have been Harvey Clark. But we basically, any kid under 18 who came up, we served them a lunch and a breakfast. And between March 12th and basically the end of the summer, we're right around 106,000 meals were given to our community's students. Currently, until they get the second stimulus act, we need them to pass a law that says I can feed all kids under 18. Otherwise, we're going to fall back onto our other rules, which says you have to be qualified for free and reduced lunch to be able to get a meal from from us. That's going to be challenging for us. And so we're hoping that the federal government in the next couple of weeks here, before school starts, will come back in with the nutritional piece. But we're still going to be serving lunches to kids, both in the comprehensive distance learning and in the hybrid. We've worked out ways for us to do that.
A real quick question for you, Dave, and that is, my son works with special needs kids over at Liberty High School, and those kids are just plain not doing well with the distance learning. It just plain does not work for them at all. So what is the plan for the kids who are definitely the special needs group that working at home does not work?
Yeah, it's going to start with them working at home. We're going to do more outreach with our folks. We're rearranging classified staff to make sure we have more contact. Then it's going to be limited in person, which is we're going to start bringing in folks who fit that exact situation and seeing them in groups of 10 or less with our staff and starting to work through that. The sooner we can get the virus handled, the sooner we can get kids back in school. And that's the real big issue right now is that if we don't have the virus contained in our community, it's not going to be contained in our schools. We've got to deal this. We need to fight this from a state and a federal level. And we're not seeing that kind of organization right now. And that's really, for me, that's one of the big pieces is we've got to control it in the community. I will say that, again, the use of masks and the social distancing, we're seeing our numbers come down. And everywhere I go now, it's not a fight anymore for me to work with my employees to say, everybody wears a mask. I wear a mask. So we'll continue. One of the things that we will be doing is working, case managers will be meeting with parents of every kid to talk through exactly what you're talking about on a case-by-case basis to figure out how we can provide more support to kids. But it's not good, right? I mean, the start is not going to be awesome for some of our students. I hate to say it that way. It's just distance learning isn't good for any of our kids. It's like, I want them all back in school as soon as we can do that. Great question, though. I mean, it is the central issue that we're having right now. Okay, I'm going to keep us going here. Two big changes between the spring and now, and that's this idea of synchronous learning. In March 12th, when we canceled school the first time, I had basically 14 days to have every teacher rearrange how they've done things for some folks 30 years. Like they've taught in classrooms, and all of a sudden now you've got to teach via a Zoom or Google Meet. To be honest, if you would have told me before last year started that I was going to have to do that, I would say that it was impossible. There was no way that every teacher would be teaching virtually, even by the end of the year. And the fact that teachers were basically doing it within 14 days, I think that speaks to who we have working for us right now. I mean, really great folks. But one of the issues that we did have is that just the amount of time that teachers had with students, actual time where teachers are interacting with students. Now that could look a lot of different ways. It could be presentation, but it could be group work. It could be students working on something and this teacher working with that student. But that synchronous time was one of the pieces that we had to increase this fall. Asynchronous would be, I give you an assignment and you're working on your own. You may be on your camera, but it's separate. So moving from the spring to the fall, we've increased the amount of synchronous time, like time that teachers are actually working with kids by quite a bit. And then daily attendance will be taken in the fall. One of the things we did is invest in better software. We've invested in Zoom, and we've invested in a learning management system called Canvas. Canvas is used by all of the higher education institutions in Oregon. It's used by different school districts, Beaverton, Portland Public. And it has a lot more tools. Like when a kid interacts with a document on Canvas, it actually keeps track how long did they interact with it, how long were they logged on and actively doing something. So now we can begin to take attendance for what work kids are doing. And then we have to grade. At the secondary level, it's about grading and credits. At the primary level, it's still about assigning work and then providing feedback. So those will all be happening this fall. Synchronous. At the elementary level, currently, we'll be doing somewhere between 2.5 and 4.5 hours of synchronous time. That'll be time that our teachers are working with students directly. Asynchronous time on Wednesdays, teachers will be prepping. There'll be professional development going on because all of our teachers are having to learn these 2 new software packages. And then so weekly, there's about 16 hours of actual synchronous time with the teacher that elementary students will have. I'm going to skip this. Middle school, our current middle school had a 7-period day. So they're going to have to completely redesign because there's just no way they're going to run 7 periods on a virtual schedule. So they're squishing that down to 5 periods. What it will do is it'll mean more math and language arts for all students all year long. And then we'll be kind of rearranging what electives, because some electives it doesn't make sense to run them in the virtual. Every middle schooler will end up having a success class, which is kind of a course about how to study, how to take notes, how to, why should you do well in school? It's based off of a class that we run in AVID, another program that we run in our district. So, and then lastly, we've got kind of the high school. High schools will run 4 classes a day at 90 minutes. They have about 30 to 40 minutes direct instruction per period. And then they've got each of the lessons, the software will allow us to record it so kids can actually play it back later, depending upon if they're understanding something or not. And then there's also recorded lessons, still working through like AP courses, AP Chem. They will still be offering those pieces, but labs and our CTE courses, Viking House, those are all pieces that we're still planning on doing, but we're having to figure out how to still manage all of the social distancing and those types of things with it. And then the last was, we already kind of got into this conversation, is there's still a lot of concern and work to do about our English language learners, our special students with IEPs. And then just some of our students who this doesn't work well. We've got to continue to reach out and find ways to connect with them. The other thing we heard from parents is our parents need a lot of connection, which is they're under a lot of stress to work, provide, help get their kids organized in the morning for the lessons and the rest. So lots of work for us to do. And with that, I'd take kind of what's next for us. We're continuing to monitor the virus in the Tri-County area. We're waiting for those numbers to continue to come down. As they do, we're going to have to start moving into limited in-person instruction. The move between CDL, the comprehensive distance learning, and in-person is going to take time. We've put most of our bus drivers on unemployment, so we've laid them off. And for us to start up again, we've got to get them all rehired and into their spots. We've got other folks across the district that we've laid off that we're going to have to bring back. Organizations, who's doing the social distancing. So there's just a whole bunch of coordination here. So when the decision does happen, it's going to happen at a logical place, which is most likely like at the 9-week quarter, or at the semester, where there's kind of where we can finish giving grades and credit to kids, and then we start with our in-person. We're also going to have to coordinate with other Washington County school districts. I meet weekly now with Washington County and Washington County Health. And then we're working on the limited in-person because we know that there's some kids that we've got to get in here earlier. Again, the problem is that some of those kids are also some of the most vulnerable, and how do we justify bringing them back into a space that could harm them, or they're more at risk too. So that's a real challenge for us. And with that, I will do my best to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, one hot button topic that comes up is a bill that Rand Paul is trying to put through the Congress right now, and that is have the funding follow the kids, so that if the kid chooses to go to, since they're out of school anyway, to go to a different type of distance learning, it would the funds would follow the child. How would that affect your school?
So a couple of things. One is that what makes America America is public schools, which is everyone has the right to a high quality education. And as soon as we start pulling money away from public schools, I'm not in support of anything that does that. And it's not just because I work here, it's because as an American, that's what makes us different. Anyone here can do well in their schools. So I don't like pulling money away from public schools to go anywhere else. Now, I will say that a certain amount of this happens anyway. One of the problems that all of Washington County schools are under right now is we have parents who are pulling their kids from the public school system to go to private charters, private online charters. And I will end up, currently we have about 80 students out of our 6,000 that have left and have, it's what they call intent to enroll. They've provided me notice that they intend to enroll in another school. We are, we're hustling because we've got to market our school. I think we have good plans here. And I think, again, our teachers are good. They're excellent. They care. I think we need to touch base with those parents and make sure they know what our plan is, because I think we can pull some of those folks back. I think they're leaving because they just don't know what our plan is yet. But no, we must never abandon the public school system. It's what makes us different. And we have, don't get me wrong, as a leader of the public school system here in Forest Grove, we have lots that we can improve on. I'm not saying that at all. We have lots of things we want to fix, but moving money away from our kids is a, yeah, not supportive of all of that. That was probably more political than I should have got, but.
Your update is well appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dave, I got a question. In terms of cafeteria, feeding kids, are you going to feed them in their cohort, in their room, or are you going to send them down to the central cafeteria?
We're going to feed them in their rooms. And at the elementary level, that'll be pretty easy. So when they come in the morning, we'll have their breakfast. It'll be in a sack, and they'll grab and go their breakfast right into their rooms. And they'll, the first 20, there's an amount of time that they'll have to eat and socialize in their cohort. Where it gets more crazy is, again, middle school and high school, where I've got at least 1,000 students reporting at one point. And so what we're looking there is having carts in different parts of the school, and the kids will come out of that, whatever space they're in at that time, and they'll eat in whatever period they're in at that point. But we're also going to have to coordinate kids like entry into the school. I'm sure everyone saw that picture in Georgia where they're supposed to be social distancing. There's 300 kids in a hallway all standing next to each other. We can't have that. So I know Doug and his team, actually, I will say that the high school team, Doug, and have been doing great work on just trying to get ahead of some of these things, but they're already starting to talk about, like, kids are going to have to enter on different doors so that we don't overcome kind of any one hallway with that.
Dave, this is Blake Tim, and first of all, I want to commend you and the district staff for the amount of communication that you've given to parents and to staff over the last few months. Through the email listservs, you've provided a lot of information, a lot of explanation, as much as you can, to those of us who are concerned about what's coming up. So, thank you for your transparency and your communication. The question I have is in terms of what has been discussed, and it's probably still in process, in terms of performing arts classes at the middle school and the high school. Obviously, it's very tough to do any kind of music when you can't have everybody in one place, and we know from experience here on our meetings, singing over Zoom just doesn't work that well.
So yes, there are some electives. We're still planning. And again, I would, Doug, if I say anything wrong or I say anything incorrect, jump in and correct me. But we're still trying to make things happen for kids. Here's a great example, which is, again, they've changed the sports seasons. They've moved the fall season kind of later in the year. But the conversation Doug and the principal of the high school and I kind of had yesterday was around, we got to get kids moving. And so there's this piece here where, can we organize them into smaller cohorts and can we get them running? Again, we can't play a game and we can't have an interaction there, but there's still some things that we could do to get kids moving. I know I have a program, Adelante Mujeres, where they have mentors who are meeting with young Latinas in my schools, and I need that to happen. And so even though they're not going to be able to meet in person, we're still going to run that activity. It'll look different, but we're still going to run that activity. Kevin, Noreen, and I were just talking yesterday about music. And I will admit, I think we're kind of headed to, there's got to be a way for us to continue to move kids forward on learning music, performing, but we can't have them in the same room blowing on their trumpets because of that's a super spreader event. And so we're trying to work through all of those issues with these individual pieces and figure out what we can and what we can't do. But we're still moving forward with trying to get kids active. Doug, did I leave anything out there? You're probably more in touch with that than me.
No, you nailed it. We're kind of in a holding pattern. I'm leaving to another meeting in 1 minute to talk to our conference about what we're going to try to do and try to get some ideas from all the schools in our league. So yeah, it's the main goal is to try to keep kids active in whatever way we can. We've had coaches doing Zoom workouts and Google Meet workouts, and I know the music and drama or have done some things as well. So we're just trying to look at all the different avenues we can get kids as active as possible. So
one of our great concerns, and I didn't bring it up earlier, but is our students' mental health. I don't know about you, but being locked down this long, it's just like when I see faces on a screen, it's like I'm excited I get to interact with somebody, and our kids have been locked down for a long time. So we are working through kind of how we're going to start reaching out to kids and parents. And in the midst of all of this, I've got an email sitting in my email box right now about a student who's concerned, wants to be active. There's lots of, with the George Floyd protests, our kids have opinions and have voices and they want to be heard. So we're also trying to figure out how to continue to provide them an opportunity to provide voice, even in the pandemic, And Blake, thank you for we've worked hard we've been communicating basically, we try to get one out every week. It's been a challenge because, again, I still don't feel like I've communicated enough, and it's still been kind of weekly, but that's kind of the best we've been able to do.
Are the teachers tested for the virus or not?
We won't. Current plans are that they would not be tested before they show up. What we're doing is basically there's a self-assessment that teachers will undergo. Again, we're just like everyone else, which is when someone tests positive and the Washington County Health contacts them and then tells them to quarantine, they'll start contact tracing through Washington County. If that's one of our teachers, what we'll be informed is that one of our teachers, but they won't tell us a name because of HIPAA. And so, but what's been happening is it usually comes through to us. The person usually calls us and say, hey, I've got a quarantine. I'm either positive or I'm not positive, that kind of thing.
Thank you.
You could say the tests are free. COVID tests are free.
Yeah,
Dave,
we wouldn't have a problem. Again, I think most of our folks, as soon as they start having symptoms, go get tested. But it's just not, the school district at this point isn't like testing everyone to get a starting baseline.
How about checking temperatures?
So in the guidance from an ODE, we're not checking temperatures at the door, although we would, again, if someone was not feeling well, we would check temperatures. Currently, it's pretty much a self-assessment as they're coming through the door. And then if someone does not look like they are feeling well, then we'll bring them into an isolation area and at that point take their temperature.
Don't you think that's a little bit late? Don't you think they've already exposed everybody? I'm a true believer in taking temperatures as they walk through the door.
That's just not what our guidance is. I'm not sure, again, if I'm thinking about 1,000 students and trying to take every single one of theirs temperature, I'm not sure how practical that is. And I understand that's one of the reasons why we're sitting in comprehensive distance learning right now is that our organizations that we're trying to run here are not like Safeway. And but even Safeway, they don't shoot the temperature of everybody coming into a store. They do at the hospital, but again, those are just some of the challenges that we've got right now. And what I can tell you is basically every week since June 1st, something new's been thrown at us every week. So I can't tell you that in a day from now, I'm going to hear from the governor, okay, now you need to take everyone's temperature, because that's kind of the way it's gone.
One comment about something you said earlier. You're cutting down the electives and going more towards math and literacy. Considering the numbers that we have as far as compared to the rest of the world in math and in language, I actually think that's a good thing.
Yeah, so when schools run block schedules, they have a thing called a 4x4, which means that you basically go to the same class every day, 4 classes, and you do a whole year's of work in a half a semester. In schools that run 4x4s, they often double block folks, which is you go like language, arts, or math, you go every day all year long and you earn 2 credits. And so it's a really easy way in those schedules to kind of provide more access. For our middle school, with this change in the schedule for this year, it's going to be it's an opportunity, right? Because the kids will be in that block every day the rest of the year. We'll have to see kind of how it works and take a look at what that may mean down the road for them.
Some kids will hate it.
Oh, hell yeah. It's not the easy classes.
Nope. Some hard ones.
So that sounds like a situation like my son-in-law says, when you get throwing lemons, make lemonade.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions for Dave? I feel for you, Dave. You've got a hard job there.
I've got a great team. You know, it's really, really interesting because I will tell you, I'm probably this is my 31st year. I've never been this tired before, and we pretty much haven't stopped since March 12th. With that said, I'll also tell you that the good news about all of this, we have great people. Our staff, the people who work for me, who are like my direct support, they're wonderful. And that's this community. That's something spectacular, right? Is even in the midst of this, they've made lemonade out of these lemons, and I have great support, so I can't argue, really. Many people have it worse than I do. But thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dave, for coming and sharing what you've been working on, what the district's been working on. I don't think any of us ever thought when we got out for an early spring break that 6 months later, we would be in the position that we're in now. So thank you for all you've done. I mean, like you said, the teachers are having to relearn a way of doing things that has just never been seen before. So I appreciate that so much.
I was joking earlier that the one positive thing out of this is every staff member and every kid in my school system wants to come back to school right now. So it's like, that's a dream situation. So we're all can't wait for it to start.
Definitely.
In person.
We all look forward
Thanks.
to that day, I'm sure.